Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Breakdown, where we spent a good portion of 7 months telling you how good Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to make the Washington football team, only to watch him get hurt in the first 10 minutes of the season. What other terrible takes do we have for you? Well, we're glad you tuned in to find out, because once again, I'm your co-host, Wayne Cavati, and I'm joined by the great Chris Fiamano and Mike Dunton to bring you more terrible starts and sits advice. No, just kidding. We didn't do that bad. We didn't do that poorly, but of course, in week one, there's always the devastating injury, and we had several of them that we will talk about today. But before we get there, we have a very special show. Dunton, want to tell everyone why this is a very special show this evening?
Why? Because it's Fanduel Fee's birthday.
Happy birthday, Fanduel Fee.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Yep.
We appreciate you taking time to do the show this evening. I'm having a drink during the show, so we'll see how the end of the show is by the time we get there. Before we jump into how last week went, let's look at a few things. Last week went fantasy-wise. Let's look at a few things that happened on the actual football field. The first being the Atlanta Falcons. Let me rephrase that, because they didn't happen on the football field. They did nothing on the football field. They were they, I'll put the question to you guys, were they right now, currently speaking, were they the worst team in the NFL on opening weekend? Dutton, to you first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with yes. I have to say yes. I mean, if
Falcons?
we're going week by week,
Yes.
then yes. Falcons were pretty bad.
Right now, currently at this moment, correct. Yeah, I'm not asking if they're the worst team in the NFL. I'm saying what we've seen right now, are they the worst team? Fee, what do you think?
I think that they could be. They're probably in like the bottom three. Detroit was pretty bad.
They put up 33 points.
Did they?
Right? The Falcons scored 2
points.
field goals in the first 5 minutes of the game, and then nothing. No,
but they did outscore the Packers.
Oh, yeah.
The Packers were pretty bad.
Well, that leads us to our next question. Is Aaron Rodgers a whiny little brat? Should he? Is there a reason, after all, that the Packers didn't pay that man? Because let me tell you something. This was something I texted Dunton, okay? I don't know if you remember this, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It was a Monday Night Football game. Tom Brady had one of the worst. It was against the Chiefs. It was one of the worst performances I've ever seen a superstar Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame.
The announcers said that Tom Brady's career was coming to an end.
Everybody said it. And what did he do? He went out and went on MVP in the Super Bowl. But that's Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady he literally wants to kill you. That's how. Does Aaron Rodgers have that? Because what we saw was someone that gave up, right? Because that was the worst performance of his career. And is he the guy that's Tom Brady? Tom Brady didn't give up. Tom Brady had a bad game. Tom Brady went out the next week. I know, because the dude I was standing next to him in my fantasy league, was so pissed at Tom Brady, and he was drunk. He dropped him, and I picked him up on the waiver wire and made it to the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Okay, in my fantasy league. So yeah, I mean, does Aaron Rodgers have that same Tom Brady mentality?
I don't know if Aaron Rodgers does, but to be fair, the Packers team as a whole was horrendous.
No, it was
their defense was getting torched
by James Winston.
And the fact that the Packer offense couldn't get anything going certainly probably had something to do with the fact that he, kind of packed it in the second half.
Yeah, I mean,
here's the thing. To answer your question, Wayne, he is not Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers has definitely found some zen in his life, which could be good, but I don't think it's necessarily what you want for your killer instinct starting quarterback of a franchise such as the Packers. I don't think it helps that your Michael Finley was on Keyshawn, J. Will, and whoever the other host is of that show on ESPN this morning and blasted Rodgers' work ethic right now in practice and said that he's given up on the team.
I mean, that's what it looked like when you have a guy. We're not talking about what's the guy's name? Brock Osweiler going out there and getting signed $18 million and laying a dud, right? We're talking about one of the all-time greats who constantly said he didn't want to be there, and then goes out and has easily the worst game of his career.
And he
Right?
didn't look like he wanted to be there, right?
And it didn't look like he wanted to be there. There's a lot of
Right.
factors here. This was, look, optics. You always hear that word, optics. This was really bad optics for Aaron Rodgers if he wants to prove that he actually gives a crap and wants to play
here's
football.
the other thing, and I am, Wayne, you will know this. I am the biggest Aaron Rodgers supporter, even though he's not a quarterback for a team that I enjoy. My daughter's a huge Packers fan. Aaron Rodgers is probably the reason behind that.
Right.
But I take issue with his comments on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, where there was a lot of, we didn't do this, we didn't execute, we didn't do this. That's fine, but at some point you have to throw a me in there.
Yeah.
You are the franchise. You are the face of the team. And at some point you can say we as a team, but you also, going back to your original point, Brady took ownership. I sucked and I will be better. I haven't heard that from Aaron yet. I'm not saying he hasn't done it in the locker room, but in public, we have not heard
Again, optics, right?
Right.
Optics.
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly what you're saying.
So week 1 or after week 1 is a gigantic overreaction central when going into week 2. The Packers play the Lions this coming week. Okay?
Monday Night Football.
And Monday Night Football. And if this is not a get right game for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers,
we have a concern.
Then there's a bigger problem. But the Detroit's defense is terrible. While Detroit's offense put up 33 points and they were good, they showed out and they were pretty good, they still gave up tons of points and their defense is terrible. If the Packers cannot figure out a way to beat the Lions and put up points against them, then you have a bigger problem, and we'll know that after week 2.
And can we just talk about how great a coach Sean Payton is? Look at the quarterback.
100%.
Drew Brees was already a good quarterback in San Diego, became a Hall of Famer with Sean Payton, right? Look at Jameis Winston, man. He just shredded the Packers. Made it look easy. What was the guy, the Chase Daniels, right? That came in Brees the 1 year, and then he wound up signing a contract somewhere else.
Yeah, listen. We all know that Jameis is a gunslinger, okay? We know that he can put up 400 yards every single game because he used to do it. Just the fact that he threw 10 interceptions all the time was a big problem.
Highly efficient and looked like a real quarterback.
Yeah, so, there's certainly got to be something about the eye situation that he got taken care of in the offseason, right? That's got to have something to do with it. And then you add in the fact that Sean Payton is a genius and you throw him into a ridiculous offense, and all of a sudden you got something.
Well, the other thing here's a question for you, because as I was watching that game on Sunday, it came to my mind. Do you think no pressure Jameis will be so much better than first or second pick? Remember, it was Jameis or Marcus, right?
Right, yeah.
First, Jameis or Marcus. All this hype, Heisman winner, playing in the state that you played for Florida State in, right? A lot of hype. Now, it's no pressure, Jameis. Like, Jameis, we need you to come in and just right the ship for the Saints. We talked about it for 7 months. What's going to happen with the Saints offense? They didn't have Michael Thomas, and it was like one of the best offenses in football on Sunday. So maybe Jameis is like, what else do I got to do? Just go out here and have fun.
Yeah. And let's talk about another team that looked really bad. Are the Texans, we'll start with you, Dunton. Are the Texans good, or is Urban Meyer that much out of his league? Because
Urban Meyer should have answered the questions today and said, yes, I would love to be the coach at USC.
Right.
Because I don't think he lasts very long in Jacksonville. The fact that man did not run the football for the entire first half,
carries,
feels like
8 touches for James Robinson.
Correct. That is a travesty. Okay. That's just horrible game planning and coaching and whatever it is.
And inability to adjust. Fee, you remember at halftime I texted you, they were down 20. I said, if James Robinson isn't on the field the whole game, the whole second half, Urban Meyer doesn't know what he's doing. The first 2 plays were handoffs to Carlos Hyde for 4 yards.
The fact that they have Carlos Hyde in the game at all, other than just to spell James Robinson for more than a couple of plays, is just ridiculous.
You can't
James
throw the
Robinson
ball
was a
55.
really, really good running back last
Right.
year.
Very
And the
good.
fact that you're sitting him on the bench for Carlos Hyde is inexcusable.
You can't throw the ball 55 times in the NFL and expect to win like you did in college. It's not going to work. If you're throwing the ball 55 times in the NFL, it's usually because you're down and you're trying to come back. Urban Meyer went into that game saying, I'm going to show off my new toy, Trevor Lawrence, and it did not go well. I mean, the Texans are not supposed to be 1-0. The Texans are supposed to be 0-17 this year.
They're not
They've
good.
already
They're a bunch
defied-
of cast-offs, right?
They already
Look, I'm a
defied the
Texans
odds.
fan. They're not good.
Are they the replacements?
They
are.
They're a bunch of. It's a group of people everyone's cut last season, right?
Yeah.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
It's everybody that other teams cut. They don't have a.
They're
single
major league.
Texan, right? and it's just it's they couldn't make adjustments on offense. They made Tyrod Taylor look like like Aaron Rodgers should have looked against
Right.
against
Right.
but
Absolutely.
it was ridiculous. So yeah, if you're gonna buy into if you're jumping on any Texans on the waiver wire this week, I'd proceed with caution. So let's jump.
And Jaguars too, by the way.
Yeah, that's true because that's a scary offense right now to trust and figure out what the heck's gonna happen.
Yep.
So let's get into what we're here for, right? Our locks of the week, our Fanduel Fee stacks of the week, and our starts and sits. We are going to be held responsible. Last week, we did not do good on our lock of the week. None of us did, as a matter of fact. I took the Washington football team getting a point. I'm sorry. And they had it until the fourth quarter, but again, no Ryan Fitzpatrick and Heineke, whatever. He came in, he did very well in that first, when he first came on, and then the second half they barely moved the ball, and it just you let the Chargers hang around, and Justin Herbert's too good. So I didn't win there. Dunton, I don't know if you remember, I told you I'd be on board with your Panthers pick if it was 3.5. Sure enough, the Jets score a late touchdown. The 5.5 point spread gets cut, and you lose by a half point. But
half a point.
But folks, we all agreed Green Bay was the lock of the week from Fee for 3.5, and we all got burned. You're not alone on this, Fee. We all bumped in. So we didn't look good. So this week we promise we're going to do better. So what you have to remember is last week, as we said on the show, is we made everything based on last year, right? The defenses that we were looking at were last year's, and we told you to expect the unexpected. We said that because we're going off last year's numbers, it could mean nothing by the time and we proved ourselves correct by giving you wrong answers.
We did a great job of that.
We did great. That being said, as Fee said, week 2 is even worse because you're going on overreactions, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So that being said, let's start with our locks of the week. I'll get it started. I don't know why the Bengals are getting 3 points. The Bears didn't show us anything yes, I understand they're home. The Bears didn't show us anything that proved to me that they're going to win a ball game by 3 points, maybe by a point, but I think the Bengals are winning this one. Bengals +3, lock it in. Done.
I'm locking in the Rams. I think the Rams, with their 3.5 points against the Colts, the Rams look like the real deal on Sunday night. I mean,
greatest show on turf, Rams, right?
It was fun to watch if you have Matthew Stafford like I do. It was fun to watch if you have any of those wide receivers. I know Robert Woods was a quiet Robert Woods, but he was still active in the game. So I think the Rams are a tough team right now. So I'm going to take the Rams with their 3.5 points.
And that brings us to Fee.
I have the Eagles +3.5. The Eagles looked very, very good. Their offensive line and defensive line are intact and also very good. I know that they're playing San Francisco, who, looked okay last week. But the fact that the Eagles are a home dog, regardless of whether it's Garoppolo or Trey Lance for San Francisco, I don't see the Eagles losing this game. I would even take them on a money line, but I'll take them getting the 3.5 points all day long.
So which of these 3 do we think is the fantasy football breakdown lock of the week? I kind of like all of them. I won't lie to you.
I do too. It's tricky.
If I had to choose one that wasn't mine, I would take the Rams minus the 3.5.
I'm looking at the Rams too. I think that team is it's like Dunton said, they're fun to watch. I thought they were just dominant. So let's lock in the Rams, 3.5.
Lock it in. Lock it in the Rams. Don't disappoint us, Rams.
One thing we need to talk about before we get to Fanduel Fee's stacks of the weeks is something that Fee brought up in the Eagles and 49ers games. We touched on Ryan Fitzpatrick's injury. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. He's on the IR. Obviously, you're not really worrying about him. He wasn't starting for you in week 1. If you had him, he was definitely a deep bench guy that you didn't plan on playing unless you had to. So we don't really have to worry about the waiver wire for him. 49ers, Mostert is out for the year.
He was my guy. He was my guy.
We'll get to how we killed 3 people's seasons in just a little bit. And then Elijah Mitchell, right? Was that his name? Elijah Mitchell?
Yes.
Did I say that right? He comes in. I mean, without a doubt, the top waiver wire pick of the week, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Right.
Yep.
Has to be.
was there anyone else out there that you guys saw on the waiver wire that surprised you, that's probably on the waiver wire that you think is someone that people should target?
Not really. I think most of the guys that you would consider picking up are usually already taken. Most of the time, an injury has to happen in order for someone on the waiver wire to become like a big pickup, and I think that one is San Francisco running back situation for sure, and Elijah Mitchell is I think the top pickup this week.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy is out, right? But like you said, that's not really a situation because most people have Cortland Sutton already, right? He's not sitting on the waiver wire. They have some depth at wide receiver, but I feel like they're taken, right? I don't feel like anyone's out there.
Yeah, I mean Tim Patrick is out there mostly, I think, in most leagues. You could grab him, but I think that's a reach. I mean, you're going after Tim Patrick. Right. There's KJ Hamler, who runs their spots.
Drafted in most 12-team leagues.
Right. I think in most 12-team leagues, KJ Hamler is usually gone. If he's there, you could probably grab him if you really need the help or the depth at receiver. But yeah, I think for the most part, I mean, with Jeudy going down, you're kind of scrambling a little bit.
Yeah. And as Dunton said many times, by week 3 or 4 on the waiver wire, you're out of starters. So Elijah Mitchell is definitely one of those guys that could step in and be a starter.
Yeah, and I was going to say,
absolutely,
go grab Christian Kirk if he's on your waiver wire, because I think he becomes an option in Arizona where you're going to be surprised. I mean, he had 5 targets. He caught all 5 targets.
Yeah.
So, I don't think he'll be there much past this week because there will be more injuries to Jerry Jeudy type players. So go get Christian Kirk if he's available.
Couldn't agree more. So that brings us to FanDuel's Fees stacks of the week. And FanDuel Fees stacks did okay last week. As a matter of fact, they did so well. I discussed with him my lineup before the game, and I usually do league or tournaments that pay out spots 1, 2, and 3. But we were so confident in the lineup that I went in a winner take all, and I finished second place 3 points away. And it was primarily James Robinson. And even though that was one of FanDuel Fees stacks of the week, if I go back to week 1 right now, I wouldn't change a thing. I'd still start James Robinson, right? Obviously we know, but I don't think if that's the pick that cost me the 3 points, I wouldn't have changed it. That wouldn't be the guy that I would have flipped out.
Yeah. The process was good, right? We went after what we thought were going to be good plays and what should have been good plays, not again, it being week 1 and not knowing exactly where teams were going to be. And I prefaced, our stacks last week with that exact comment was, you're not exactly sure exactly where teams are going to be. You thought that Jacksonville should have ran the ball more, and they should have, but now we know that Urban Meyer is not going to do that, and he's not going to use James Robinson. Right. So clearly James Robinson is not going to be a good FanDuel play going forward until Jacksonville, shows you that they're going to change their offensive philosophy.
All right, so let's get into what you like this week, stack wise.
Yeah. So this week, you're going to hear a couple of names that were big last week and should be again this week. Right now, I'm looking at a Tampa Bay stack with Brady and Antonio Brown again. You could throw in Mike Evans also in that, or instead of Antonio, but I really still like Antonio Brown going against Atlanta. I also like Matthew Stafford and the Rams going against the Colts defense, who, while the Colts usually have a very good rushing defense, they didn't really show up against the pass last week.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Stafford was targeting and hitting Cooper Kupp and not Robert Woods makes you think that Kupp is the guy there. While we were high on Woods in the preseason, as a big receiver, he didn't really do much last week.
Well, we didn't know that Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford were having secret practices without inviting anybody else. But Al Michaels told us about 100 times on Sunday night.
Right. Yeah. And so now we know, my stack here is Stafford and Kupp against the Colts. I also really like Justin Herbert and either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, although I do like Mike Williams a little better. Plus, he's a lot cheaper than Keenan Allen going against Dallas's defense, who showed us nothing against the pass last week. And I feel like Dallas's defense is going to be a very big defense to attack for FanDuel stacks going forward against the pass. A couple other guys that I really like that are not involved with stacks, but that you could either play naked or, if you wanted to throw a game stack out there, you could. Jalen Hurts, 7,800 going against San Francisco. I really like Hurts this year. He looked great last week, and I think you should stick with him. He was one of our stacks of the week last week as well, and he showed up and put up big numbers. I really like CeeDee Lamb on the opposite side of that Dallas Charger game. If the Chargers are going to put up, big passing numbers against Dallas, you should probably look to the other side of that ball.
Right.
And the fact that Dallas threw the ball as much as they did and did not run Zeke, even though it was against Tampa's very good rushing defense. I feel like that Dallas is more of a passing team than they are a rushing team. And if the Chargers are going to throw the ball against Dallas, you should expect Dallas to throw the ball back. And CeeDee Lamb, Mari Cooper was huge, but CeeDee Lamb is my guy there, and I think he's going to have a big year, and he's probably going to be the more consistent player. And of course, I mentioned the Brady and Antonio Evans, but I really like any Tampa player. And if you want to throw up a game stack there, you could throw up Atlanta guys as well. I know Kyle Pitts didn't do much of anything in week one, but I feel like he would probably be a solid play coming back because Atlanta is not going to be able to run the ball at all, and they're going to have to throw it probably 50 times again. So, if you wanted to put Matt Ryan in there or Calvin Ridley and or Kyle Pitts, big game stack would be a solid play in that game too.
Nice. I like it. I really like the it's like we said, we based everything on last year's stats, but the Falcons showed us that their Civ-like defense was not improved by any means. So I'm backing the Bucks to the stack limit, if you would. Moving on to starts and sits. We told you we'd be held accountable here too. Last week, I'm happy to report that we did all right on the starts. It was the sits that we definitely guided you incorrectly, but we definitely did all right on the starts. We did, and we want to apologize from the three of us and three people's seasons. I'm
sorry.
We told you Gus Edwards was the start of the week, and he was injured.
And then he got hurt.
Moments after I feel like we stopped recording. Raheem Mostert was a start of the week. Jerry Jeudy was a start of the week. Did I cover it all?
Edwards.
Yeah. And I believe
right.
you had Fitzpatrick and McLaurin as one of your stacks in your Fanduel Fee stacks of the week. Yeah, so we crushed people last week. We're gonna try not to hurt you this week. If you are an NFL player listening to this podcast and you do hear your name, just be cautious that we said your name and be extra careful on the field on Sunday because we don't want that burden placed on us any longer. Moving on to this week, starts and sits. Quarterbacks, we did all right last week. We told you Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold, and Jalen Hurts. All three did pretty well. Granted, it took garbage time in the fourth quarter from Sam Darnold, but hey, we'll take it any way we can for fantasy points. Our ultimate start was Trevor Lawrence, and even though those Jaguars look bad, it was a rookie game one, right? He threw for over 300 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. He did have the 3 interceptions. Still a good start. Who do we have this week at quarterback fee?
I'm sorry. Can you say that again one more time?
Who we started?
Who's your starting quarterback?
Oh, right. Okay. I am going with Jameis this week. I'm all in on Jameis going forward, fantasy wise this year. Going against Carolina, I feel like that's just another big game, coming for him. I'm not sold on Kamara being a workhorse back for running the ball. And I think that New Orleans is going to throw the ball more often than not. And Jameis is going to be, the recipient of that, especially going against bad defenses. I know he only threw for 150 yards last week, but he did throw for 5 touchdowns. And whether you get the touchdowns or you get the yards from Jameis, you're going to get one or you're going to get the other, and you're going to get points from him. So he's my starting quarterback.
Dutton.
Tom Brady's 8-0 against the Atlanta Falcons. Tom Brady will be 9-0 against the Atlanta Falcons after Sunday. Tom Brady threw for almost 400 yards at the age of 44 against the Cowboys, and the Falcons are not as good as the Cowboys. I'm going with Tom Brady.
Are they? Do you think he'll play the fourth quarter?
No, I don't, and I think he'll have 35 points and not play the fourth quarter.
Probably. I'm going to throw Jared Goff into the mix. I think he's a fun play this week. I think they're going to be behind. He looked like he was comfortable in the Detroit offense, and if they're playing come from behind ball again, he showed he has enough targets there to score some points. We're not talking about if he's going to be good or if the Lions are going to win a ball game on Monday night. We're just talking about if he's going to put up fantasy points. So I think Goff is the man. But if you're asking me out of these three, who my ultimate start of the week is, I'm going with Dunton and Tom Brady. What do you think, Fee?
Yeah, I'll go with Brady all day. All right. Sure.
So we'll lock in Tommy boy. Tom Brady. Okay. So moving on to running backs. Obviously, it was a wash last week. Both our 3 starts for you were Raheem Mostert and Gus Edwards, who played 4 downs combined. And then James Robinson, who we've discussed. So we didn't really have a start for you. Our consensus start was Gus Edwards, but he was gone before the season opened. So this week I'll get it started. I'm going Melvin Gordon. Look, Patrick Lindsay and Mark Ingram and David Johnson all scored a touchdown. You can make a very good argument that none of those 3 deserve to be a running back in the NFL after what they did last season. And all 3 scored a touchdown against the Jaguars. And Melvin Gordon had a good week last week against the Giants. So Melvin Gordon is my pick. Fee.
So I got 2 guys here. I'll throw one out to you. I really like David Montgomery going against Cincinnati. He was solid for the Bears last week. He was solid for the Bears last season.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any reason to think that they won't stick with the running game and Montgomery going forward. And Cincinnati's defense isn't one to be scared of. So Montgomery is my start of the week this week.
And then you said you had 2. Did you?
I did. Yeah. So the other guy I really like is Miles Sanders. I mean, he's an obvious start because you're going to most likely start him anyway.
Right.
But him going with Jalen Hurts, and it really opens up running lanes for the Eagles and Miles Sanders. He was great last week. San Francisco gave up a ton of yards on the ground last week. Again, it should just be if they stick to what that is, it should be a big game for Miles Sanders against the Niners.
And then Dunton.
I'm going with the Browns running back, Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb. The last time they played the Texans, they both rushed for 100 yards. They'll probably both rush for 125 yards this week against the Texans because the Texans are playing a real team with a real coach this week. So I'm going with the Browns running back.
Look, as a Texans fan, my only hope is that the Chiefs broke them mentally, right? Because they had the Chiefs on the ropes.
You're right.
And then the Chiefs needed a big second half. So that my only hope for the Texans to be 2-0 this season is that the Browns are mentally broken because they're obviously a very good football team. I like all these picks. I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough to pick right there. If we had to pick one, I don't know.
It's hard. I can go with Melvin Gordon. I mean, I just don't think the Jaguars can stop.
My fear with Melvin Gordon is that this is the game that he gets hurt because we pick him, right?
We're picking him, right?
I would not go with Melvin Gordon this week. Melvin Gordon, a lot of his stats came on that 170-yard touchdown run that he had halfway through the fourth quarter when the game was basically over against the Giants. If anything, I would go with the Browns running backs. Basically everything Dutton said, and you, Wayne, the Texans defense just, that doesn't scare me. The Browns defense, they're 12-point favorites. They should really be running the ball all day long against them.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go Chubb and Kareem. We'll give you a package deal this week. Moving on to wide receiver, we hit it out of the park with T. Higgins. We love T. Higgins. He's a big fantasy football breakdown favorite here. That's hard to say. A lot of F's right there. Yeah. So moving on to this week at wide receiver, Dutton, we'll start with you this time.
I'm going with Calvin Ridley because at some point Matt Ryan's going to have to throw the ball because they're going to be down a lot of points. Yeah. And the Bucs secondary is extremely banged up.
Yeah.
I mean, that is why the Cowboys were in that game last Thursday, because the Bucs secondary, I think they were grabbing people from the stands at one point to play in the Bucs secondary because it was so backed up.
Yeah, that's fair. Pete.
So I know I just said that the Browns should be able to run the ball all day long against the Texans. There are a lot of receivers this week that are pretty good, but I wanted to go with one that maybe was kind of on the fence with people that might be starting him or not. I would suggest starting Jarvis Landry. OBJ is out again this week. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to run the ball all the time. And Baker's going to have to throw it to someone. And Jarvis is just a volume machine. So I'm going with Jarvis Landry this week against the
Giants. And he's kind of like the running back wide receiver, right? You said he's a volume.
He had a rushing touchdown last week.
Right. And he's like the 5-yard guy that we've talked about 100 times. We'll have 10 receptions and 50 yards. And in a PPR league, you're 20 points.
And hopefully a touchdown.
Right.
That's all you want.
That's what I meant.
Right.
I'm going to throw TJ Lockett into the mix.
What a week that guy
had. He had a great week, and they're playing the Titans, who the Cardinals shredded.
Torched.
And I know TJ Lockett this early in the season, you probably wouldn't sit him anyway, but I want to be on record saying I think he should have a huge week, so I'm throwing him in the mix. I could go with any of these three. What do we like here, guys?
I go Calvin Ridley.
I like Ridley.
Go Ridley, but we have a theme going here that we're focusing on 2 games, if you notice.
Yeah. And we're taking all of your picks, Dunton.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of pressure here. Thank you for this.
So the tight end this is an easy one. None of us have to say anything. The Falcons were the worst defense against the tight end last year, and Dallas Goedert already has a touchdown against them this year. So let's just Gronk it up, right? I mean, he had a monster game last week against the Cowboys. He looked great. And then Fee's notes say Gronk versus the Falcons. Why not? And that's exactly it. Why not? The Falcons have been brutal. All 3 of us are locked in. I guess there's really no discussion. To go back to last week, we gave you 2 solid picks in the aforementioned Dallas Goedert, who didn't have a touchdown, and Higbee. We went with Jonnu Smith, who had 6.7 points, but I mean, for tight ends, it's not the end of the world. It wasn't like we gave you a Mike Gesicki.
No.
It could have been worse. I think our starts were pretty good last week. So obviously we lock in Gronk here and we can move on to our sits. Now our sits, as I told you, definitely have we left a little bit to be desired. But our quarterback sit was Joe Burrow, and we pretty much almost nailed it, right? We said that T. Higgins was going to be our start, if you remember. And then you said it was weird that you had Burrow as your sit. But we said if he throws for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, and most of that goes to T. Higgins, you can have them both. That's thing
exactly what happened.
Yeah, except he threw for about 250. So he wound up getting a decent amount of points. But he still wasn't the start of the week, right? So I think we hit him on the sit. So let's go to our quarterback sits. You're making me rethink mine because I was going to say Matt Ryan against that Bucs defense. But I think the possibility of garbage time and the second half, he may score some points, but I did not like the way that Falcons offense looked. I don't know. He barely played in the preseason, right? And that's what we're seeing here a lot, right? The Aaron Rodgers, the Matt Ryan, shortened preseason, almost none of the major elder statesmen of the stars, if you would, played it down. We have new coaching regimes, especially in Atlanta, and this stuff takes time to gel. So I am going to stick with Matt Ryan, but you kind of made me wonder if he's going to get garbage time points and be a decent fantasy start. But I'll stick with him because that was my gut feeling. Dunton, to you.
Kirk Cousins. That Cardinals defense could end up being the thing that finally makes Kirk Cousins come back to reality. Because we've talked many times on the show, we don't understand the life that Kirk Cousins is living and how he keeps falling into these lucky spots. But I think that Cardinals pass rush is something that the Vikings are not prepared for. I'm worried for Kirk Cousins on Sunday. If that Cardinals pass rush is anything like they were last week, Kirk Cousins is in trouble.
Yeah. Fee.
So I'm going with Carson Wentz. The Colts are playing the Rams, and the Rams defense is very good.
Very good.
And they put pressure. I think Aaron Donald didn't do a whole lot last week, and I think he's going to be revved up to go against the Colts. I'm not 100% certain about their offensive line, the Colts offensive line. With
it
injuries,
sounds like what's his name is healthy again. Eric Fisher's healthy again.
Oh, Fisher. What about Nelson?
No, still, at least last I heard, he was still on the mend.
And I think that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal, sure.
For the Colts offense and the Rams defense, I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on Wentz. I don't think he's going to be able to do much with the ball this week, so I'm going with Carson Wentz.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and to your point about Matt Ryan, I do believe that the Falcons are going to put up some points against the Bucs' terrible secondary, I whether it's garbage time or not, I think that the Falcons are going to end up keeping that game closer than people think.
I thought that about the Eagles too, but in your statement about Wentz, I agree with you that you should sit Wentz. I think that maybe he should be our sit.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't think that should let you shy away from Jonathan Taylor or Hines, because both of them, I think they had 11 receptions combined last week, right? I know Zach, what's his name?
Pascal.
Yeah.
Pascal. Yeah.
And he was the beneficiary, right? He had 2 touchdowns, but Wentz was dumping the ball off all day. They combined for like 10 or 11 catches for over 100 yards. Just because we're low on Wentz, I don't think that means you should shy away from them. And that reminds me, my buddy Zach Bacau, he writes for The Athletic now, a good friend of mine, and he's doing great work. He said the receiver on the Colts, and it reminded me of it. He's doing great work on game day picks against the spread and stuff, and getting expert picks and stuff. So be sure you check him out on The Athletic. His piece came out today. That made me think of it. But let's get back to our sits. And like I said, I'm good with Wentz. Dutton.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay.
I'm fine with the Wentz. I think that Rams front is going to be too much for a banged up Colts O-line.
Okay. So moving on to running backs. Dutton, we'll start with you.
I'm going to sit James Robinson. And I have to sit James Robinson because Urban Meyer had James Robinson touch the ball 5 times.
Yeah.
5 times.
He doesn't trust him.
That's disgusting. Disgusting. 5 times. Hopefully, by me telling you to sit him, he'll have the ball like 25 times
I
this
hope
week and
so.
we'll feel better about it. But until we see something from Urban Meyer that he actually trusts James Robinson, I'm sitting.
James Robinson could have 200 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns this week, and sitting him is still the right play. You cannot put him in there no matter you can't.
Yep.
Fee.
Yeah, so I completely agree with the James Robinson call. I think he should be our consensus pick. My pick for running back to sit this week is Overreaction Central. Sit your San Francisco running backs. I know Elijah Mitchell is going to be a popular play because Mostert is out. The fact of the matter is Trey Sermon was a healthy scratch last week. He may end up coming back. Not to mention that San Francisco has other running backs on their roster. And even though they went with Elijah Mitchell, 20 something times last week, Philadelphia's defense, like I said earlier, is very good. And I think you should not play any San Francisco running back this week.
I agree. I also do agree with Fee that James Robinson is without a doubt the sit of the week, but I do want to throw in the Texans running backs. As I said, all 3 scored. I could see people wanting to get Ingram or Lindsey, not so much DJ. David Johnson had a receiving touchdown and like maybe 4 yards rushing. It was very minimal rushing, but I could see people wanting to get Lindsey or Ingram in the lineup, but that is ill-advised. The Browns held Edwards-Helaire in check, on the ground, and there's no way Ingram and Lindsey are going to pull off what they did against the Jaguars again. But I think we can lock in J-Rob as your sit of the week at running back. Last week at wide receiver, we gave you an injured guy in OBJ. Dunton said to be weary of Keenan Allen, but Keenan Allen had a good day. But our consensus sit of the week was Kenny Golladay. And Kenny Golladay, I will say, was a sit, but he did wind up doing much better than I thought he would. I'll give him some credit there. He actually caught some balls and didn't get hurt. So that being said, let's get started. Dutton, we'll go to you.
So this is going to be a weird sit for a couple of reasons. He's a popular start. I've heard even NFL Network tonight was talking about him as a start. And Fee talked about him as a stack playing against the Falcons, but I'm sitting Mike Evans. And the reason I'm sitting Mike Evans, and I want everyone to hear me out on this, is Tom Brady has to stroke Antonio Brown's ego right now to keep Antonio Brown in a good place. Mike Evans is fine, right? Mike Evans has been the consistent wide receiver for the Bucs for a long time.
You took a pay cut to come back, right?
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to please him.
You don't have to please that guy. I don't think Mike Evans is a sit every week. I just think this week there's too many weapons in the Tampa Bay offense, and I think this is a week where Mike Evans, you look at his stats later on, you're like, all right, he threw them like 7 times. He caught 5 passes for 40 yards. Maybe he had a touchdown. So I'm going to sit Mike Evans.
Can we go off on a little side tangent here? Yeah. Done. Well, I'll go to you first. What do you do with Ronald Jones? Can you keep this guy in your roster?
It's so crazy because he's the starting running back this week. Like, he was announced as the starter, even though he fumbled. Yeah, it's so bizarre.
But if he fumbles again, he's out, right? We know that. That's the thing.
Has to be, right? So you can't even,
can't. Okay, he's a James Robinson right now. You have to wait for the 200-yard, 3-touchdown game and get burned with him on your bench before you could trust starting him in fantasy.
100%. That's exactly what I was going to say, because you can't even trust him to play in like a regular game right now where Bruce Arians watches him. He could bobble the ball, not even officially fumble it. It could just move around in his arm, and he's going to be sitting on the bench because it's such a short leash. So I stay away from Ronald Jones until he figures out how to hold on to the ball.
Okay, so sorry about that, folks. But
that's all right.
Back to the wide receiver. Mike Evans was Dutton's pick. Fee, who's yours?
My pick this week is also kind of a strange one. I'm going with DJ Moore.
Okay.
Going up against the Saints. It's very clear that offense runs through Christian McCaffrey. Sam Darnold looked fine last week, but I just don't think that DJ Moore is going to be able to put up the amount of points you expect him to put up And I just believe that he's probably not going to get you more than 10 fantasy points this week against Saints defense. And I think that he should probably be a sit as long as you have someone else to replace him with on your bench.
I'm going to throw Juwan Johnson out there because I think he's going to be a hot commodity on the waiver wire this week. I think people are going to see that he had like 17 points, depending on your fantasy, PPR versus non-PPR. He had 14 to 17 points last week. The dude had 3 receptions for 21 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? You take away the 2 touchdowns, he had a very pedestrian day. But I think people are going to look at fantasy points, as Fee said earlier, and sticking to our theme, the week 1 overreaction jump. I think people are going to get him in their lineups this week, and I think they're going to get burned. So that's my pick. What do we think here, gentlemen?
I'm good with the DJ Moore. I agree with Fee. I just think the Panthers are going to struggle against the Saints. I mean, regardless of the Saints offense, the Saints defense is still good, right? They still fly around to the ball. And I think the Panthers, Christian McCaffrey's going to have a Christian McCaffrey game, but I don't see much else coming out of that fantasy-wise for the Panthers offense.
Yeah. I love DJ Moore's volume, but you may be right? Maybe this is the 5 receptions for 40 yards game, and that just doesn't get it done from a DJ Moore, right? You need more from that, from him at that position. So moving on to tight end, we totally bad word the bed last week because we went against our own beloved touchdown tight end king, TJ Hawkinson, and told you against the 49ers he'd be terrible, but instead he had a better game than any time he had last year when we told you to start him every week.
Right.
Burned us.
So we will never go against you again, TJ. We apologize. Please come back to the good graces of the Fantasy Football Breakdown. We still love you very much, and you proved us wrong. But ironically, Fee and I both had Hawkinson last week, and both Fee and I have the same tight end sit this week. Fee, I'm curious as to why you have Mike Gesicki, and then I'll tell you why I have him.
All right. I have Mike Gesicki because the Bills defense, while they didn't look great last week, I think are better than what they looked. And I think that you should not overreact to the Bills defense not looking so good. Not to mention that Gesicki did absolutely nothing last week. And I am a firm non-believer in Tua and that Miami offense. I think that Miami offense should go through the run, which isn't good enough. And they really need to throw the ball more. And it seems as though it's not going to be the tight end position.
So here's my thing, and I'm about to sell Dunton. You ready for this, Dunton? I'm about to sell you on it.
I'm ready.
He had 2 targets last week. Obviously, no catches. He didn't register a fantasy point. So I dug deep, and I'm trying to figure out why. Because Gesicki is a big, athletic, wide receiver type tight end. Last year, he played 67% of his snaps in the slot. This year, you have Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller, who comes back this week, and Devontae Parker, who had a pretty big game last week. He ain't going to see the slot. And maybe maybe the tight end isn't part of their offense. And if he only had 2 targets last week, going against, and I'm going to agree with Fee here, the Bills defense is much better than they played last week. So if you had 2 targets and no catches last week, you're not part of this offense, especially with Will Fuller coming back, especially against the Bills where you're going to have to block. You're going to need more blocking to protect Tua and Gaskin. And that's the other thing. Gaskin and the other running back, they had more reception and more targets and receptions than Gesicki. So when we always say a young quarterback's best friend is tight end on this show, we always say that. His are the running backs. Tua does the quick dump instead of looking for the tight end. I don't even think Gesicki's rosterable right now in fantasy football. That's how bad I think he is out of the equation in Miami, which is a shame because I think he's a very good tight end. Dunton, who's yours?
I agree with everything you both said about Gesicki. The only other name I will throw out there is Zach Ertz, and I wrote a question there. Does he play anymore? Because I think the Eagles have replaced him with Dallas Goedert, right? And I think Zach Ertz wasn't –
and he's hurt.
Right, he's hurt. and he's not happy in Philly. He was looking for his way out of there too, right? So I think it's a combination of I'm not the guy anymore. I'm hurt. I'm towards the end of my career. My wife is protesting again, and she has the right to because they're not getting paid enough. So I'm going to focus on that. She's the bigger star than me right now. So, I mean, but yeah, I'm all in on Gesicki. But my big thing is about Zach Ertz. I just don't know if he's going to be an Eagle much longer, let alone an effective fantasy player for us until maybe he leaves the Eagles and finds a team that needs a tight end.
No, I agree with that. And I think you definitely sit him. I don't disagree with you there, but I just think Gesicki has to be our sit this week. So let's review the show for those of you who stuck with us through the whole rants and raves of week 1 overreactions, but let's go through everything. We're giving you the Bengals +3 and the Eagles +3.5, but we're locking in the Rams as the fantasy football breakdown lock of the week, giving 3.5 points. Fanduel Fee's stacks of the week. He loves the Brady, Antonio, or Evans against the Falcons, and he doesn't dislike the Falcons coming back on the other side if you want to go with Ryan and Ridley or someone else there. He loves Stafford and Kupp. We've heard his love affair with Stafford all offseason, so that's no surprise. And he likes the Herbert and Keenan Allen or Mike Williams stack against Dallas. Mike Williams in particular because of his value. And a couple other guys he threw out there were Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb. Now, our consensus fantasy football breakdown starts of the week. At quarterback, Tom Brady. At running back, we're giving you the Browns in Chubb and Kareem Hunt. At wide receiver, we're going with Ridley. And at tight end, we're going with Gronk. Our consensus fantasy football breakdown sits of the week. Quarterback is Carson Wentz. The running back is James Robinson for the foreseeable future, may I add. DJ Moore at wide receiver. And Mike Gesicki at tight end, who you could also throw the parentheses for the foreseeable future around as well. So that about does it for another great show. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And one more time, happy birthday, Fanduel Fee. Really appreciate you cutting off the wine and sitting down with us and talking fantasy football for an hour tonight. So We'll see. Well, we'll see you all next week, and good luck to you this weekend. This time, we're going to win you some money.
We got you this week.